Hi, Jonathan Head with Nimblehost here, and in this video I'm going to share a simple 3-step process for customizing RapidWeaver themes. But before we get started, it's important to know how CSS and HTML work together. So here's a brief and hopefully easy to understand explanation. When visiting a website, usually you only see text, images, video, and that sort of thing. As you can probably guess, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to make a site look nice. Now, to make this easier to understand, imagine that a website is a jigsaw puzzle, and that each piece of the puzzle has a special name written on it. The pieces of the puzzle, which represent your content, is the HTML code. A web browser will look at the HTML and understand that this piece is some text, and this piece is an image, and so forth. The CSS code is like directions on how to design and put the pieces together. With CSS, you can write specific instructions about what to do with a particular piece of the puzzle. Now, in CSS, there are 3 basic types of names. The first are generic HTML tags. For example, when you add an image to your RapidWeaver site, RapidWeaver will add an HTML tag to the page for you. In CSS, this img is one of many HTML tags you can use in CSS. The second basic type of name is called a class. The nice thing about a class is that there can be more than one piece of the puzzle with the same class name. The third basic type of name is called an ID. These are unique names, meaning there can only be one piece of the puzzle that uses a particular ID. Now, when adding CSS to RapidWeaver, we'll be entering the code in the page inspector here, as I mentioned in the tools video. CSS code is actually quite simple to understand, and it follows a specific format. First, we have to type in the special name for the exact section that you want to change. This is so that RapidWeaver knows what piece of the puzzle you're referring to. In the examples here, the P of this line is a generic HTML tag, the first basic type of CSS name that I mentioned earlier. On this line, the .content tells us this is a class name. Class names always start with a period. And for this line, the number sign indicates this is an ID name. ID names always start with this symbol. Now, after you've entered the special name for the exact section you want to change, the next step is to type in a pair of curly braces. The curly braces act like a container that holds all the specific instructions for the changes you want to make to that section. Inside the curly braces is where you enter the properties, or instructions, for making the changes you want. These properties are written in a specific format. First, you type in the name of the property, for example, margin. Then, you type a colon, followed by the value, and end with a semicolon. All CSS properties are written in this way, and you can add as many properties as you want between the curly braces. One thing to keep in mind is that the value for each property you use depends on the type of property you are using. Some CSS properties use numbers, and some use words, and there are even some who can use both. So now that you understand how CSS and HTML work together, I'll explain the simple 3-step process to customizing a RapidWeaver theme. The first step is to ask, what do I want to do exactly? For example, I want to change the width of the sidebar, or I'd like to change the height of the header image, etc. The next step is to ask, what is the special name for the exact section I want to change? Is this a special name that's an HTML tag, or a class name, or an ID name, or perhaps it's a combination of these? The final step is to ask, what CSS code can I use to make that change? If you don't know any CSS code, then be sure to take a look at the online resources that we'll share later. And keep in mind, there's usually more than one way to make the change you want. One of the most frequent comments we hear is, I know what I want to do, but I don't know what CSS code to use. For this, I recommend the free CSS reference on Cultured Code's website. This page breaks down all the CSS properties into easy-to-understand sections, like text and layout, making it easy to find the CSS code that will do what you want. The next best resource I suggest is to use one of the major search engines and to type in CSS space change. But make sure not to hit the Enter key or click Search. The reason being that Google, Yahoo, and Bing will show you a drop-down menu of suggested searches. This way, it will be easier to select and use a search phrase that can show you results specific for what you are wanting to do. So, now that I've explained the simple 3-step process, you may be asking, what now? If you're new to RapidWeaver or unfamiliar with CSS, be sure to watch our in-depth tutorial video on how to use the 3-step process to customize a RapidWeaver theme. And if you run into any problems, check out the troubleshooting video to see if that helps resolve the issues you may be having. But most importantly, have fun and happy weaving.